I never thought one folded piece of paper could change the trajectory of my entire life. And yet that's exactly what happened when the will was read aloud and my name wasn't on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Lena, I'm 26 years old, and for as long as I can remember, family came first. That wasn't just something we said at holidays. It was a rule. We lived by rituals. Sunday dinners, summer vacations at the same lake house, my father's careful toasts about legacy and honor. My parents, Marianne and David Brooks, owned a small but respected chain of boutique hotels. My older sister Claire had always been the bright one, the one our parents praised, the one their friends said would inherit Dad's acumen. I had dreams too. Nothing flashy, just a solid career, maybe a small consulting firm, a home filled with books. I was content with quiet ambition. Then Dad died. It was sudden and strangely silent. A heart attack on a rainy Tuesday. We planned the funeral, we said words people expect to say. And then, a week later, we sat in the lawyer's office for the reading of the will. I thought I knew what would be in it. I thought Father would leave instructions for the hotels to be managed carefully, that he'd make some provision for both Claire and me. Instead, the lawyer read words that felt like knives. The hotels, the properties, the shares, everything was left to Claire in trust. Mom received a life estate in the family home. Me. I was given a handwritten note folded into an envelope and a single line. Lena, find the truth. Trust no one. Trust no one. The room tilted. I looked at Claire, expecting to see shock, a wince, even a measure of apology. She was composed, an artfully polite smile already forming as if the room had always been designed for her. Mom blinked slowly, just once, and then looked away. The lawyer offered condolences and then retreated into the polite air that settles over wealthy disputes. When we left the office, everyone hugged and murmured, then dispersed into their carefully arranged lives. I walked to my car with the note in my pocket and the sudden sense that I'd been excluded not by accident, but by design. That night I read the note again and again. My father had been a man of careful hands. If he'd left me that instruction, it meant he'd seen something he couldn't name in daylight. The next morning, while Mom and Claire were at a luncheon to celebrate Claire's future leadership, I went back to Dad's study. It was a room of smells: old paper, cedar, lemon oil. I had not been allowed in as a child unless I had permission. Today I had none, but I had motive. Hidden behind a false bottom in his top drawer I found files. Shipments, contracts, and invoices. At first they were dense and boring, but they were also a map. One folder was titled Westfield Project, Confidential, and inside were transfers listed to a company with a name I didn't recognize. Another set of invoices was marked Consultancies, and routed through shell companies registered in neighboring states. As I followed the paper trail, my stomach tightened. There were emails, casual messages about protecting the brand, and expedited payments. I recognized some of the contractor names. They were vendors our hotels used. One photo slipped from a stack onto the carpet and my breath stopped. It was Claire, but not in the family portrait kind of way. She was laughing in a way I hadn't seen before, arms around a man who wasn't our father. In the corner of the photograph was a date, the same year I was born. I sat on the floor and held the paper until it bent. The idea that Claire might have been more than our parents' favored child, that she might be the center of a secret network, felt impossible and precise at once. I thought of Mom's calmness, her hands always smoothing her skirt, her little silences. I thought of Dad's odd glances when I asked too many questions about the business. It all fit like a jigsaw with a missing piece suddenly snapping into place. The betrayal didn't come with fireworks. It arrived like a cool, deliberate hand closing over my future. Claire had been cultivated, protected, set up as heir while the family's true finances were being redirected. My father had discovered it, I realized, and had tried to warn me without shaming the family while he was alive. The note, "Trust no one," was his last attempt to tell me that the family's story wasn't the whole truth. I didn't run to social media. I didn't confront Claire immediately. Fury is a hot, blinding thing, and I wanted something cooler, precise. So I planned the only way I knew how. Gather evidence, find allies who would not be intimidated, and build a reveal that left no room for misunderstanding. Revenge, if you can call it that in the quiet night when you're writing lists, is less about spectacle and more about making the truth unavoidable. Step 1 was the archives. I spent nights cross-referencing invoices with public records. I found a paper trail showing that profitable properties were being quietly sold, revenues redirected through a web of consultants and holding companies, and key approvals signed off by a board that included Claire's business partner, a man who had the charm of a television lawyer and the ruthless eye of someone who knows how to hide tracks. The more I dug, the more the picture hardened. Claire hadn't just been favored. She had been an operative in a scheme to siphon assets while maintaining the appearance of a thriving brand. Step 2 was allies. I met with a former hotel manager, Marta, who'd been eased out the year before Dad's illness. She had been loyal until small invoices for staff training suddenly stopped. She told me about late nights when Claire visited the financial office with a menacing smile and demands for flexibility. She told me she'd kept a notebook of dates and odd transactions. Marta's words were small and specific, the most dangerous kind. She agreed to share everything. I also spoke to an independent auditor who owed me a favor from a small consulting job I'd done years ago. He agreed to look at the files and translate them into something a regulator would accept. Step 3 was timing. The annual shareholders meeting was 2 months away. A polished event where Claire would be lionized, where press would gush and investors would nod their approval. If the truth broke then, it would not be a rumor that faded. It would be public, incontrovertible. I contacted a journalist I trusted, gave her a sealed packet, and arranged a coffee at dawn. She read, did not smile, and said, "This will ruin them if it's true. Are you prepared for that?" I am a woman who answers in actions. So I said nothing except that I was ready. On the day of the meeting I sat near the back, my hair pulled into a loose bun, my blazer plain. Claire walked onto the stage with that practiced confidence I once admired. She was beautiful and dangerous, a creature of light when she wanted it. Mom watched from the front row with a face like porcelain. Claire spoke about legacy and stewardship, and the room clapped politely. When the Q&A started, I stood. The chairman tried to move on, but I asked to speak. They tried the standard family courtesy. "We don't discuss internal disputes in this forum," and I said, "This is relevant to the shareholders." I told the story plainly. I read dates, contract numbers, and transfers. I named shell companies and linked them to agreements where payments were redirected under the guise of consulting fees. I spoke of a property in Westfield that had been sold at a loss to conceal revenue. And I read the words from an internal email where Claire's partner instructed the finance office to smooth the books. Phones came out. People leaned in. The hush was precise, surgical. Claire's smile, so steady for years, broke. Investors shuffled their papers and murmured. The journalist I'd met stood and, over the sound system, corroborated what I said. She had documents and witnesses. Then the wave hit. Regulators were called. The press lit up like marshmallow over flame. Claire's partner fled the room in a suit that suddenly looked ridiculous. Mom's face crumpled into 1,000 tiny regrets. The family's house of cards, tidy, polished, carefully propped, collapsed not with a racket but with a slow, unavoidable sigh of pages turning. Victory tasted sharp and complicated. I sat alone in the dark on the back steps of the hall afterward and felt it. A rending, and beneath it, a small, steady relief. But then reality pressed in. The company had employees who depended on it. Vendors who trusted the Brooks name had loans to balance. The fallout I'd engineered affected people who had nothing to do with my family's deceit. I slept badly for weeks, the faces of housekeepers and kitchen managers who would be out of work passing through my mind. If revenge was a hammer, I'd used it with force, and the debris settled on innocent things. Then life added a twist I hadn't accounted for. When my sister arrived at my door the next morning, she held an envelope shaking in her hands. My father's handwriting, unsent letters he'd kept in his cedar chest. She looked at me as if she didn't know where I fit into this new world. "He wrote to you," she said, voice thin. He said he'd failed both of us in different ways, and that he wanted me to protect the company because he feared chaos if he didn't. He wrote that he loved you. I read the letters in the kitchen light, the ink blotting slightly where the pen had trembled. In those pages my father confessed to ignorance, to fear, to a quiet regret that he had kept too much from us. He had known there were problems but had been paralyzed by the thought of tearing the family apart, so he had tried to shield us, to navigate the mess without exposing it. The letters did not absolve, they complicated. They revealed a man who loved in imperfect ways and who'd left me a breadcrumb to the truth when he could no longer confront it. That knowledge shifted something inside me. The revenge I'd carried out was still necessary, maybe even just, but it was not the whole story. Justice without repair is hollow. So I spent months making amends where I could, meeting with employees, setting up a fund to cover lost wages while audits completed, negotiating with a few of the vendors to stagger repayments. I did it quietly, with the help of Marta and the auditor who'd first read the files. I did not expect gratitude. I expected quiet nods and occasionally, a look that said, finally. Mom retreated into a life of quiet penance. Claire faced charges and, for a long season, vanished from the public eye. She called me once, voice brittle, asking if I had any of Dad's letters left. I mailed them to her and included a note. I did what I thought was right. She replied days later with a sentence that stained me. I should have told you the truth years ago. I don't know if she meant the part about the company or the part about love. Maybe both. Years later, the restitution fund helps families whose livelihoods were affected by corporate collapses. The hotels still exist, reorganized under a board that includes workers' representatives. Sophie, the youngest cousin whose life had been upended, works for the foundation now and on some mornings, laughs in a way that fills the kitchen again. I am different, less naive, more precise, and dogged by the knowledge that truth can be both liberating and destructive. So if you'd like to know what I think now, months after the dust, truth matters, but so does responsibility. Exposing lies can be necessary, but if you don't plan for the fallout, you might break more than the guilty. Sometimes revenge is not an end. It is a beginning that asks you to repair what you broke. If you read this far, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're new, subscribe for more stories like this.